Human-animal hybrids, something that sounds right out of a horror or science fiction movie, but it turns out we've actually come much closer to creating mutated animal hybrids than you may think. In fact, we technically have on a number of occasions, and that's what we're talking about today. That and a few cryptids thrown in for good measure. If you had to fuse with any animal on Earth, which one would you choose? Let me know in the comments. And with that said, I'm your host James, and these are the top 10 scary human-animal hybrid stories you were never taught in school. And we're starting off this list with rabbit-human hybrids. Back in 2003, scientists in Shanghai successfully fused human cells with rabbit eggs in a laboratory dish. And the crazy thing was, they survived until they were disposed of and harvested for their stem cells. So it's unclear how long they could have survived and whether the thing would have actually reached past the embryo stage. We could have had a real half-person, half-rabbit monster living amongst us. They'd be about 20 years old now. Not sure why the scientists didn't try this again and actually let the thing live. Maybe it just would have been too freaky. Or maybe they did try it again and there are a whole bunch of rabbit people hiding away somewhere in China just waiting to be unleashed into the world to do God knows what. Imagine how freaky a rabbit person would be though. A mangy, almost hairless rabbit with a human-y kind of face hopping around. Human-y, that's a new word. At our number 9 spot we have the Humanzee. We're gonna chill in China for a little bit longer here. This apparently happened back in 1967. This story is not 100% verified, but according to 2 scientists in Shenyang, they were able to impregnate a chimpanzee with the seed of a human, which I very much hope done artificially. They were hoping to create a more advanced form of chimpanzee that could hopefully learn to speak, and were even hoping to send it off and do experiments in space. I think the more advanced form of chimpanzee is us. I think that's what we are. But anyway, apparently the chimp did get pregnant, now carrying a human-chimp hybrid in its belly, but the creature was never born as their lab and work was destroyed by revolutionaries and the chimp died while 3 months into its pregnancy. Not sure about this story. On one hand, this all sounds pretty far-fetched, but on the other, as I said, we do share about 98.8% of our DNA with chimps, so stranger things have happened. Number 8, mice with human livers. So this is an interesting case because I'm actually kind of on board with it. It's a great alternative to testing on chimpanzees. I shall explain. In 2010, researchers at the Salk Institute for Biological Studies in California were able to genetically modify a mouse so that it had an almost human liver. The aim of the game here was to create an animal they could test on for diseases that only humans and chimpanzees get. In the past, we've only been able to test stuff like hepatitis B and C and malaria on chimps, so being able to use mice instead, still not ideal, but it might be the best alternative. Basically, the goal is to infect these genetically modified mice with whatever disease they're testing on, and then attempt to treat them. Could make for pretty big strides in the medical field. At number 7, let's take a step away from actual science for a moment and discuss something a little bit more mysterious. The cryptid known as Owlman. I was considering putting the Mothman at this spot, but we've all heard about the Mothman plenty of times before. The first reported account of this terrifying creature dates back to 1976 in the village of Maunan in Cornwall. 2 young girls had encountered the beast, describing what they saw to be an almost man-sized owl with glowing red eyes. It had been seen hovering above the church tower. Since that fateful day, more and more reports began swooping in about this mysterious owl creature, and till this day we still don't know what this thing is or was. Was it just a hoax or possibly a really big owl? Probably, but it could have been a human-owl hybrid, which was the result of some horrendous scientific experimentation. You know, that's also a probability. So now we're going to talk about another mouse-related hybrid. This time it's mice with human brains. Yeah, it turns out we actually got pretty close to making Pinky in the Brain a reality, because I think sometimes scientists just go, why not? Let's just do it. Back in 2014, scientists were able to imbue several lab mice with millions of human brain cells. The mice lived though. After about a year, almost every cell in their brains had been replaced by human ones. Now, my human brain automatically goes to these mice now performing complex math equations and playing checkers with the scientists, but that's not what happened. Turns out their memory just got way better. The way scientists tested this was by playing a certain noise, then they'd send a small electric shock through the mice, and the next time they played whatever that noise was, they took note of how the mice reacted, bracing for the incoming electric shock, and they were able to determine that the memory of these mice was 4 times stronger than that of a normal mouse. At number 5, we have human brain cells in monkeys. So Chinese scientists made headlines recently by successfully adding human brain cells to monkeys. This breakthrough involved injecting human stem cells to monkey embryos, leading to the creation of these kind of chimeric embryos, organisms composed of cells from these 2 different species. The goal here was to gain insight into brain development and disorders like Alzheimer's and Parkinson's diseases by studying how the human cells integrated and interacted with the monkey brains. By looking at how the injected human cells behaved and developed in the monkey brains, they hoped to gain more insight into brain functions and diseases that could be otherwise unattainable through traditional means. But it doesn't take a genius to realize that the creation of animals, especially monkeys with human brain cells, is a pretty unnerving idea. If you've ever seen Planet of the Apes, you know how things could turn out here. Next up, we have reptilians. The presence of reptilian humanoids seeping their way into our society has been a relatively well-known conspiracy theory for years. There are some folks that are just 100% convinced that a number of celebrities and politicians and other powerful members of our society are reptilian creatures in disguise. Folks report their eyes changing briefly, showing their true lizard-like pupils below the surface of their nearly flawless human skin suits, or their smooth skin starting to morph into the scaly-like texture that reptiles are so renowned for. And where are these creatures said to come from? Some say outer space, and some say there are cabals of reptilians living in layers deep beneath the surface of the earth, organizing themselves to enact world domination on the inferior species above, which is us. And at number 3, we have cows with human milk. Back in 2011, Chinese scientists were able to genetically produce a herd of 300 cows able to produce milk that was 80% similar to that of human breast milk. It contained nutrients not found in cow milk that are essential to human beings, and they were hoping to mass produce this hybrid cow human milk, getting it on the shelves of every grocery store. Suffice to say, it never really took off. Now, I don't know how this was accomplished. I am not a scientist, surprisingly, but I do know that this is something I would never drink. This isn't the only case of cows being modified with human genes to make their milk more closer to ours. This same process was also used on goats in Argentina, and this type of milk has been tested on pigs, and apparently they were fine, but I don't know about you. I just get a little pukey at the idea of chugging down milk, even just normal milk, by the way, but genetically modified milk from a lab cow, I'll pass on that one, thank you. And like I said, I'd pass on standard milk too. I just don't think we're supposed to really be consuming the stuff in high quantities like past infancy. But I don't know, there's a lot of debates about that. Number 2, the Loveland Frog. Oh boy, do I love the Loveland Frog. Yes, we're back into cryptid territory here. I can't help it. This weird and wacky creature is one of the most famous cryptids in the fine state of Ohio. This is not just one cryptid though. It's a group of 3 to 4 foot tall humanoid frog creatures. Now, the legend started gaining steam back in 1955 when a local man claimed to have seen not 1, not 2, but 3 of these froggish beings just hanging out under a bridge. He described them as being hairless, with large mouths, with no lips, and with a greenish tint to their skin. They also had a wand-like device that emitted a strange smell of almonds. In 1972, a police officer also claimed to have seen a large frog creature, saying he actually shot at one of them as it leapt across the road. So did someone slip something into that man's drink in 1955? Was he just making it up? Did the cop in 1972 just fire at a very large lizard? Very possible. Or scientists were doing some nefarious frog experiments over there in Ohio. And knowing what I've learned about Ohio over my time spent doing this job, that would not surprise me in the slightest. Coming in at number 1 though, we have pigs with human organs. So this is something that's being continually researched And it's actually pretty interesting and potentially very useful because the purpose of this is to create farm animals that can be harvested for important organs like human hearts and lungs, which could be life-saving for people needing replacements. Not sure if I'd want my new heart coming from a mutated pig monster, but I guess the chips are down. You gotta take what you can get. Japanese scientist Hiromatsu Nakuichi is one of the leading scientists on this project and is operating in the United States to help bring it to reality. They've been able to create hundreds of pig-human embryos, but none of them with the amount of human DNA necessary to accomplish their goals. But their research continues, and I'm confident that one day we'll be able to visit a disgusting pig person farm with fresh new organs we can choose from in order to keep ourselves alive for as long as we want. That's the future that I want. With all that said, I've been your host, James, and I'll catch you, yes you specifically, in the next video.